This is a show for grown-ups.
And they say bad words.
And they say bad words.
Say final warning.
Final warning.
Hello and welcome to the Pot of Blunders. My name is Nate Magnuski, and with me today is Jonathan Sévigny of Wendigo Workshop. Jonathan, how the hell are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's a little rainy here in Quebec, so it's a little sad, but it's cool.
It's the same way in Rhode Island, so we're just a few short hours away and the exact same weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
First and foremost, I always ask this question to my guests. What got you into game design to begin with?
Well, I always was interested in like how games were made and stuff like that. And I started playing video games a really, really long time ago. So I was like, I think 6 or something. So I really wanted to start knowing how games were made, and continuing forward, I just got interested into all the other aspects of design, as whether it's arts or maybe not programming, because that I don't like. But outside of that, it's quite all aspects of designs and how games are made are really interesting to me. So it's really just a question of like being interested in all things are made.
So what part of game design do you enjoy the most?
Well, I think there are two parts that I really like. It's the art design, like choosing how characters look or how like the environment or the game will look. And I also like a lot creating mechanics or trying to integrate some kind of gameplay into games. I like that a lot too.
I do want to get into the mechanics of your game, but first let's talk about why we brought you on the show. Tell me about Arkelon Chronicles. What's the setting all about?
So the setting is about a world where actually magic always existed, but from a point in their history, they discovered a ruin of an old civilization that were living there before, that were really advanced, but were wiped by cataclysmic events. By discovering this place, they were able to push their technology forward too. So they kind of integrated, like the setting is in a world where magic and technology but depends on one another, because it's not a place where only technology took over and it just continued to evolve in that way. It's really a world where both really grew together with time that passed. So the world has this feel of fantasy, but also have some elements of the science fiction part of it, with like shuttles and stuff that flies and things like that.
Player characters. What are the classes like? What are the characters like? What can we expect if we pick up this game?
Well, we really tried to bring some common archetypes of the fantasy and science fiction genres, but we tried to bring it in a way that is not new, because it's really difficult to reinvent everything about what science fiction and fantasy is. But we try to bring them in a way that are maybe less explored, or use some tropes that are less known, or use some cultural elements from different cultures. But we also try to bring some kind of dynamism to their combats. So we created a system where most character classes can act or react outside of their turn to really keep the player engaged in their character, keep the player engaged at all time, even when there are combats, because there are always a moment where in combat you just wait for like 20 minutes until your turn comes back. So really try to break this kind of weird thing where you really need to wait for like 20 minutes. We really created abilities that you can use at any time, whenever it's your turn or not, or you can just decide to use every action you have when it's not your turn. So we really try to change a little bit how initiative work to really keep people engaged.
That's a really fascinating way to deal with that problem. So in this game, I can literally have a party where one player is laying down suppressive fire from his elemental rifle, while another player sits in the back and blasts thunder shock from his hands, right? And your system that you have here can handle that, right?
Yes, exactly. Everything works in a way like we design tail heavy classes like the usual that really use magic as a core abilities, but you can also be a character that decide to use heavy magic but also use these technological weapon with them, so they can really be both like a super technological person that really likes to use guns and stuff like that, but also use wizard magic of like
Mhm.
fireball and throw some spells at people too. So we really try to bring both sides of the thing into the game, because we know as players, because we play other games too, that there are people that really like the tropes of fantasy, but there are also other people that really like the trope of science fiction. But we really wanted to make a world where those two kind of people could play together at the same table and like what they see and like what they're playing, because like a person that is really into science fiction, maybe they play D&D and they don't really see like the medieval setting, it's not really for them. So really try to bring both into the same game to maybe allow people that both genres to really play together and enjoy themselves.
This is such an inventive game. I was going through the playtest book that you have out, and the playtest you have out is close to 300 pages on its own. It's this massive book.
Yeah, in the playtest, we really included every single mechanics that could be used in the game. The only thing we cut from there is some races and classes options. This is really what we cut from there, and some spells options and stuff like that too. But everything else is really everything you need to play the game outside of some character options that we decided to cut there because there would have been too many things. But we try also to make a book that will include everything to play as a player, but also everything to be the game master. So that's why we have a lot of pages there. But we really tried to include both instead of doing two separate books, because it's gonna be maybe make one book that is more expensive, but you don't have to buy two separate books for players and DMs.
I love that entirely. What I thought was interesting is, in addition to the player rules and the GM game running rules, there's also a mechanic to basically create your own bestiary in the back of the book.
Yes, that was something we also wanted to include, because I know that some people don't like bestiaries or monster compendiums or however they're called.
Mhm.
We want to make one, but we don't want people to feel forced to buy it if they don't want it. So we really wanted to integrate the rules to create monsters into the book too. It will also be included in the eventual like monster, whatever it's gonna be called at the time. But we really wanted to include them into the core book too, because we want people to be able to create their creatures. Because if there's no creatures, if there are no enemies, I mean, you can role play around, but in a way, if you want encounters, if you don't know how to create monsters, it's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, if and when you do make a bestiary, I'll be the first person to buy it just for the art alone, if it looks anything like this other book. The art is stunning.
Yeah, if we have a bestiary, the art is gonna be pretty similar. Yes, we really want a consistent style, but also maybe pick a little more artists though if we have enough to do a bestiary, because it's a lot of work. But it's sure at like 100 and more percent that the art is gonna be similar. Yes.
How many artists do you have on staff right now working on this book?
Right now, we have one that is working on characters.
Mhm.
We have one that is not working yet because she had some little problems with her commissions, but it's gonna start working in April. So we have three total that is working right now. We have another one that does illustrations, and yeah, that's about it. There are three artists right now.
They are going to be some very busy people.
Yeah.
So most of the game designers that I interview are solo designers, but Arkelon Chronicles is definitely a team effort. What's it like leading a team?
We have a great team, so it's really easy to just, we don't see each other as different steps of importance or stuff
Mhm.
like that, because we all know the game well, because we designed it together. Although they are like, okay, I thought of the idea, or yeah, I found this that is cool. We quite work together a lot to create something, because everybody in the team, like we're 7 people, and everybody in the team has a different kind of fantasy or character they want, or something. They say, oh yeah, I saw this on a forum somewhere, someone like this ability to whatever it is, or like, oh yes, I found this, it created P and I thought it was cool, so maybe we could integrate that because someone somewhere wants to play that. With the team we have, we work quite well together. It's quite easy to lead this team.
So let's dig into the system a little bit of Arkelon Chronicles. It's a D20 based system. What about that die inspired you?
Actually, we played a lot of Pathfinder and D&D, and we really enjoy the idea of being able to use different kind of dice to do different kind of stuff
Hmm.
that this kind of system use. But we also like the idea of the D20 as one dice to do most of the things, because we think it's cool to like throw a bunch of dice to like, oh yeah, I did a fireball and look at my pile of d6. I think it's cool, but we don't like that kind of gameplay of like, oh yeah, I'm making an attack, so I'm gonna throw 24 d6.
Right.
But it's a little personal, but we also like the idea of like collecting sets of dice. So
Yeah.
we just went into the idea of the D20 really came out of a bit of nostalgia towards the first games we played, like Pathfinders and D&D 3.5, mostly about nostalgia, and we wanted to see if there was a way to use these kind of dice in a way that is not like, oh yeah, I'm using the SRD from D&D and I'm just making D&D but in another way.
This game feels very unique in terms of the setting and the system itself. I was curious reading through some of the combat things and how the game actually works. Do you
Mhm.
envision this working on like a battle mat, or do you think it's more theater of the mind appropriate? How do you picture people playing this?
I think that in some cases, battle map would be an easier way to do combat, but I'm quite sure that Theater of the Mind will work too. We have one kind of combat system that is not included in the playtest because we are still developing it
Mhm.
at the moment, but it's a way to integrate combats against gigantic creatures instead of
Oh.
like them being only a pool of HP that are being like smashed by the players. We really wanted to bring something maybe more dynamic to that, that is more closer to a Monster Hunter Shadow of the Colossus style of gameplay. So maybe these kind of fights would be easier to do, like maybe with a map of the creature and a map of the area or something like that. But I am quite sure that overall Theater of the Mind could quite work in a good way, even though there are a lot of things that use like distance. I
Hmm.
mean, D&D uses it also, and a lot of people play with the Theater of the Mind. So
This game just feels so cinematic to me. I was just wondering if it was designed intentionally for one or the other, but I agree. I think it looks like it works perfectly for both. If D&D can do it and Pathfinder can do it, this game can definitely do it too.
yes, I mean, the first edition of Pathfinder, there are a lot of people that play it with Theater of the Mind, and there are a lot of very complicated mechanics that
Oh my god,
use.
yeah.
So I'm quite sure that it's a possibility for people that don't really enjoy the battle map style of play, that could just use the Theater of the Mind with this game. I think it's pretty possible.
I think also with the proliferation of online play, given the pandemic, battle maps are much less of a problem now than they ever have been in the past.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that now with the online play and stuff like that, it's way easier to have cool maps because so many people do them like for even for free or like $1, and you get like 12 maps and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So even the applications to play are free most of the time. So it's very different from having a $30 map to buy just to play and stuff like that.
Would you mind walking me through how character creation works? Because that's always how I judge a system, is character creation, because that's what I love the most.
So when you create a character, in most of games, you start up with your concept, like what kind of characters you want to play, because it's quite a good starting point. But you can also just decide to just pick up a class and a race and just do something from that. But a thing that we integrated also is a system of personality trait and vices and virtues. The personality traits are something you choose when you're first level that can change during the game because characters evolve depending on what happens to them. But when you're first level, you select like 2 personality traits, and these will influence how you roleplay your characters. So people that have a little more difficulties to roleplay, at least they have a basic way to understand who their character is. Like, for example, if you decide, oh yeah, my character is, I don't know, confident, well, that's something basic that you say, okay, so my character is confident. I'm not really good at role play, but at least this is something I have. So you can play with this trait and just use it to influence how your character works. But it also gives you a little bit of mechanics added to the personality traits. So it's not just a word, but it also does something. So for example, if I come back to the confident trait, if you choose this one, you can once per day reroll your d20 if you fail it, and you take the better result of the two. Each personality trait has their own bonuses, or even some are also do some give some negative traits, because not all personalities are good, or not all personality brings good things to a character. So really
Mhm.
try to play with these kind of things. And when you choose vices and virtues, they are akin to the personality traits, but these do not give bonuses or anything. It's just more in depth with how your character is and how they act with others around them. We still kept alignments for now, but I don't know if we're gonna keep them. But we push them into something extremely basic that
Mhm.
mostly affects only some spells here and there. For stats and stuff like that, we went to do something pretty simple. So when you create a first level character, you have 7 points to distribute between the 6 different stats. Each point you buy is 1 point. So you just spend 7 points wherever you want, but you cannot put more than 4 points in one attribute, just for the balance of things and not
Mhm.
have a character that just destroy everything at first level. We really we tried to make it a little bit balanced, but we still kept a lot of liberty to the players. We also have, when you create your first level character, you go with the racial, everything that goes with that personality. You have your attributes that you can spend, and then you can calculate everything else that come with them. So damage, hit points, and stuff like that. Yeah, you also have the abilities that your class gives you that you can write on your character sheet, and you can choose a talent. Talents are akin to feat and stuff like that from
Mhm.
other games, but we decided to give talents at each level. Most talents are only like bonuses that gives passive abilities, but we have a lot that also give active and new abilities to characters to further increase the ability to really customize the character and make it how you want it to be. Depending on the race, some can have 2 or more talents at first level, depending on traits. And then there's the usual inventory. We put in the book pre-made kits for people that don't want to just buy everything, because I know that some people don't really enjoy looking through each and every item and buy everything. So we made like a kit for each archetypes, so people can just pick that up and start playing at the same time. So it's quite easy for them to just like, oh yeah, I'm playing a mage, so I'm gonna pick up the Arcanist kit and I have everything to start playing. So just to be sure that people that don't enjoy just looking through hundreds of stuff, that can just start playing quickly. Then everything, you select skills, like in most role-playing games, so different kind of things that the character can do, either improvising, climbing, and stuff like that. And then select some languages. Some are given by race, other by different kind of bonuses that you can get. And if you're playing a spellcaster class, well, you select your spells. And I think that's about it for character creation. We made a quite detailed tutorial also in the book, so people can just follow it along and create their character easily and quickly.
One thing I was really blown away about, even just in the playtest, is that there are so many opportunities for differentiation and really specialization for your character. You can really design the vision you have in your head, and it's not that difficult to get precisely what you want.
Yeah, it's something we really wanted to have, like people that can do the design they have in their heads, but we also don't really want people to go through a very complex type of character creation. We really want it to be straightforward, even though it's complex in the way that there are a lot of choices. We still want those choices to be straightforward and easy to see and choose, because it's cool to have a lot of choice and a lot of opportunities to create characters, but it's also difficult sometimes to choose these when you say, okay, so you can select that spell, but you have to create every effect that this spell does.
Right.
It's cool, but it's at a certain point it becomes increasingly complex for people, and we wanted the game to be easy to pick up for like beginners and new people too. So there's a bit of streamlining into character evolution, but we still try to keep it pretty simple.
I think you did it well. It's open without being burdensome. So it definitely, yeah, you can make whatever you want, but it's not like Champions where you have to define every single part of every single power, and it's calculus to get your character going.
Yeah, that's something we didn't wanted to have. We like choice. That's something we enjoyed from Pathfinder First Edition. We played a lot of this,
Mhm.
and we really liked the idea of having a lot of choice. What we didn't like though is that most of these choices were just not good. And having to choose 7 feats with like 400 of these available, it's something.
Yeah.
If you want to create a character that is more into crafting and out of combat stuff, well, you couldn't really design a character that was useful with a group because you didn't have any combat expertise in any way, but you didn't also have spell and you didn't have like skills, so you were just there. You couldn't hit anything, you couldn't do anything outside of combat. You could craft things, but it's so long to crafting that in the end your character wasn't able to do anything. So it was something really liked but also disliked. um so we tried to streamline some of abilities like accuracy and stuff like that. So even a character that is built to craft stuff or really just be like the social person that don't really fight, if a fight happens, well, it could do something. It was just not there and say, okay, so it's my turn and I do nothing because I have absolutely no capacities whatsoever.
It's almost like they were making an NPC versus a player character.
Yeah. So we really tried to have a way for people that likes combat but prefer to build characters that are more like role play, I think. That could also be useful if Game Master decides, oh yes, there's an encounter here, but you're a group of crafters and you can't do anything. So we wanted to give opportunities to these people to be able to play a character, but also feel useful if there's an encounter.
So what would you say is your favorite race and class that you've either played or seen played so far?
That's a difficult question. That's a difficult question, but I think one, because we played a lot of things like really fast. Like one day we played one class for like 2 hours and it was finished. But I think one of the classes that I enjoy, and it's funny because it's one of the classes that I despise the most in other games, but it's the performer, which is a kind to the bards. I really hate them in other games, but it's not because I just feel like in fifth edition I kind of like them, but we tried to make something that was, as I said before, a little bit more dynamic and fun. So what I like about the performer is that we tried to bring some kind of like integrate the idea that they make music or that they dance or that they make tricks or stuff like that into the gameplay. So when you play like a musician, for example, you have to play notes that does things, and then when you play a certain number of notes you can do something that is more powerful and more strong. So I kind of enjoy, a lot of people really enjoy this class because for a bit when we were testing the game we had to like ban the musician because people were always playing it. So at a certain point we had to say, okay, you have to create a character but it cannot be a musician. Yeah. It's a thing I quite like. Outside of that, of course, like the time shaman is something I quite like because it's a class that relies entirely or almost entirely into acting when it's not your turn. So
Mm.
it's kind of cool too because most of its ability are made to happen when it's not your turn. So either when an enemy attacked one of your allies, or when a surprise something happened, like a trap or something like that. So you can act and use your spells to stop these things from happening or help your allies with your magic and stuff like that. So I think it's a class that is quite interesting because most, if not all, of their abilities are designed to work when it's not your turn or when something surprising happens, something that has surprised your party or something that's not supposed to happen happens, or redo something that happened and stuff like that. So I think it's quite something that is interesting. In races, I don't know because I'm quite biased on the Dragonkins because I like dragons. But I think one of the races that I really like, and it's also something I don't like in other games, but it's the dwarves, because it's something from fantasy that I think are not explored as much as they could be, because most of the time they're just like people that live in mountain and craft stuff.
Mhm.
But we try to bring them in a way where they would be leaders in technology development, because it's something that I think these kind of crafty people could bring to a more modern world with with their capacities, like being leaders into crafting and really be one of the most advanced and powerful races that exist in this world, because they know so much things, and really wanted to go in the direction that they know a lot of things because they keep extensive records of everything. So we really try to develop a backstory for them that is more than just we're blacksmith and we have beers. So I think it's something that I quite enjoy because we really wanted to bring them into something more than just being that. Like, I know other games also explore dwarves in some ways, but since it's a science fantasy game, we have to determine like which race does what in a world where there's a lot of advanced technology. So something I think I quite enjoy, the fact that we try to bring them with a bit of a different story. And I quite enjoyed their arts too. So
So at this point, before I let you go for the evening, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you just really want to make sure our listeners know about your project or your company?
we are quite a diverse team. Like, it's not really out there, but we try to put it forward that a lot of people from our team are from different genders and ethnicities too. And we try also to bring some kind of project that will also be available to maybe people that have less money. And so from the Kickstarter, we tried to make maybe a little section for people that would like to buy copies for people that have less money, like some sort of community copies that we could give to people that have less money, because it's something that is really important to us since we are currently working with youth home for LGBT kids that have a little bit of problems either with their families or so they are currently playing the game each week for like a year, and it's really fun. So it's something that we really wanted to integrate in the campaign, to being able to help people that maybe have less money or have more difficulties to access the game and games, that we could give an opportunity to these people, and also give an opportunity maybe to people that have more money to buy copies to other people. So something we integrated in the campaign. It's nothing that people have to do. We don't force anybody to participate, but there are some strips about like rewards that automatically add some digital copies of the book at no additional charge, so we can distribute them later if some people need or have some organism that wish to acquire the game, can distribute them afterwards after the Kickstarter finishes.
How did you link up with this charity, the LGBTQ home?
We have a member of our team that is a social worker and worked an internship there. And the people there wanted to play a role-playing game. So they came to me and said, can the people play the game? And I said, okay. So we started like that. And it's pretty funny because people there, most of them don't really have friends also, because they come from other harsh backgrounds. And it's really fun to see people like making friends and bonding over a thing you created. It's pretty cool to see that what you made change some people and help them in some way. It's different from just like you created something and you put it out there. Like you can see that it has an influence on other people. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm really happy that I came on the show too. It's really cool.
Excellent. Well, let's go for the night. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again to Jonathan of Wendigo Workshop for talking to us about Arkelon Chronicles. If this game sounds interesting to you, the Kickstarter is live right now and will wrap up on May 11th, 2021. And of course, for your convenience, there's a link in the show notes to bring you to both the Kickstarter and to Wendigo Workshop's website for more information. If you're listening to this after the Kickstarter wraps up, what's the future like? Is it flying cars? Universal basic income? Blasted hellscape? Let us know on Twitter at potofblunders, all one word, or email us at potofblunders@gmail.com. We are doing our best to bring attention to deserving indie game creators, and we need your help. If you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, it'll help us reach a wider audience and to let more people know about the amazing indie projects that make our hobby so damn fun. Thanks again for all your support, and for the Pot of Blunders, I'm Nate Magnuski, and as always, may all your Ds be 12s.
Thank you.